Hi, I'm Mark of the Crown and Caliber, and welcome to Hidden Gems. Tudor, throughout its life, has really been the sister brand of Rolex. It was founded by Hans Wilsdorf, the same founder of Rolex, and they really took all of their cues from Rolex. However, about 50 years in, they finally decided to be their own brand, to take the extra step to drop the Rolex branding off of them and step into their own styling, their own way of doing things. And this watch is emblematic of exactly that. It is the watch that shows the transition. It's the Tudor Prince Date Chronograph. So let's get into it. So it starts its name out as the Oyster Date. Oyster coming from Rolex's parlance to being the waterproof case that they've used for decades up to that point. It starts off as that, and it starts off with a Rolex crown, a Rolex back, and a Rolex bracelet. It's taking everything from Rolex at this point. Even the case is heavily influenced from the Daytona of this time. And that's where it starts, but not where it finishes. By the time it's done, it changes from the Oyster Date to the Prince Date. It goes from a Rolex crown, Tudor back, Tudor bracelet. They slowly found out who they were, what they wanted to do, and changed the trajectory of Tudor. So the Prince Oyster Date comes out in 1995 and lives only for a few years until 2000. But what's really interesting about this timeline is in 1996, Tudor goes to the US market and to many other markets. We're out. They left the markets in order to figure out who they are. They condensed where they were selling, condensed their line, and took this time to separate themselves from Rolex. The first iteration of the watch, the Oyster Date, also comes with an aluminum bezel that has a tachymeter that looks like something you would see from a Speedmaster instead of from a Tudor or Rolex. Then it changes again to a aluminum bezel insert that has rotating markers that looks something out of a Submariner. It's kind of odd to see on a chronograph. And finally, it reaches the steel tachymeter. And it's looking more like a Daytona, but really more like a traditional steel sports chronograph. And throughout all these changes, it's Tudor finding themselves again. They are trying to find, what is our design language? What is it that we want to be? What is different than us? Let's stop looking at other people and play with our styles. And it's fun to watch that happen in 5 years in one model. It's a little snapshot of time. And they did it while away from everybody. So the watches aren't that common. You don't find them everywhere. And as they're doing it, they're also playing with dial designs. They have the typical white and black panda, reverse panda, silver, but they also have colors for the first time. A beautiful red, a green, a yellow, a blue. And these colors are things that are first ignored and then found again later because they're becoming popular again. If you want to talk about a watch that's overlooked right now, that's a hidden gem that's going to become popular in the future, look for those oddballs. Look for the red dial that pops, it's different, and you're not going to see it very often, but it comes back in style. We're seeing those colors again and again, and right now you can get these watches for a steal compared to where they'll probably end up. I love that. I love watching something change as time goes and then see it become popular again. And there's also one other thing, it's a little side note and an oddball about this watch. On some of the dials, you'll see Tiger on them. It feels kind of different on there, and it's not because it was a name change. Tudor decides, let's leave the US market in '95, and then suddenly they sign Tiger Woods as an ambassador for them a few years later, while they're not even in the US market. And he becomes the ambassador for a few years while these watches are out, and they're sometimes referred to as the Tiger Prince Dates because they have Tiger on them for the Tiger Woods partnership. And you wouldn't know it by looking at it because it really doesn't hit you over the head with it. It doesn't become obvious that it says Tiger Woods. Personally, I think that can be ignored. The tiger on them looks kind of cool. I like the print on them. I like the character of it. And the fact that it doesn't have the full Tiger Woods on it, I think gives it a great feel of just Tiger. It's just something that adds to the watch. It's a fun little name. So overall, we're talking about a watch that changed Tudor, the way they found themselves, creating a watch that in 5 years, 3 reference numbers, 2 different names. That doesn't happen in a watch. We keep those things around forever. We have the Explorer 2, always the same name. We have the Speedmaster, always the same name. But to have something that changes that quick while trying to find themselves, and it's a great piece of history. And then on top of that, these wonderful colors. These are overlooked watches that are important to where Tudor came from and where they're going in one reference. That's why I find them a hidden gem. Thank you for joining me today as we talked about the history of the Oyster Date / Tudor Prince / Tudor Tiger watch. Join me next time on Hidden Gems.